The elevator doors opened at 7:54 a.m., and Carolyn Holt stepped out like a verdict. She wore a charcoal blazer over a white silk blouse, her dark blonde hair pulled back so tightly it looked carved. 42 floors above downtown Chicago, the headquarters of Holt Meridian Capital occupied the entire top floor of the Strickland building. All glass and cold light and silence that felt designed to remind you of your place in the hierarchy. Most employees were already at their desks by 7:45. The ones who weren't knew better than to show up at all. Carolyn was 36. She had run this company for 4 years, since her predecessor retired and left her a firm with a reputation for precision and a balance sheet that made investors sleep soundly. She had not done it by being warm. She had done it by being correct, by making decisions before others had finished framing the question, by treating the workday as a machine that either ran perfectly or didn't run at all. Her assistant, Priya, met her at the glass doors with a tablet and a coffee. Morning. You have the Meridian West review at 9. Boardroom is set. Henderson's team confirmed. All 12 are present. The Lakeview numbers? On your desk. Good. Carolyn took the coffee and kept walking. She had not smiled yet. She rarely did before 10. The department heads cleared a path without thinking about it. They had learned, over 4 years, that Carolyn Holt moved through space differently than other people, not because she was cruel, though some would have used that word, but because she existed on a frequency tuned to outcome. She saw what was there, not what might be. She heard what was said, not what was meant. Nuance, she believed, was what people hid behind when they couldn't deliver. There was one rule she enforced without exception, above all others. Time, not as a personal quirk, as a philosophy. When you're late, she had told a new hire during her second week as CEO. You are making a statement. You are saying that your time matters more than everyone else's. I will not accept that statement in this building. She had meant it. In 4 years, she had let go of 7 people for habitual lateness. Not with hostility, with paperwork and a clean expression. The 8th was already inside the building that morning. She just didn't know it yet. His name was Daniel Marsh. He was 38 years old. He worked in the building services division, the people who kept the elevators calibrated and the HVAC running and the server room from overheating. Not glamorous work, the kind of work that only became visible when something broke. He had been at Holt Meridian for 2 years and 3 months, and in that entire stretch, his name had appeared in the attendance log exactly twice, both times for arriving 90 seconds early. Daniel Marsh was, by every metric available, a reliable man. He was also, this morning, not here. His shift started at 7:30. By 8:15, there was still no sign of him. 2 of his colleagues in building services had noticed. Teresa Kwan, who handled electrical maintenance, had sent him 2 messages with no reply. Marcus Webb, the floor supervisor, had logged it as a no-show and flagged it to HR. He'd done it reluctantly, because Marcus had known Daniel for 2 years and knew that no-show was not a category Daniel belonged in. But the flag had already been sent, and Carolyn Holt had already seen it. The boardroom at Holt Meridian seated 20. For the Meridian West review, 12 chairs were filled by department heads and senior analysts. The 13th chair, the one closest to the door, was for the facilities liaison, whose job was to confirm that all building systems were cleared for the infrastructure upgrade discussion happening that morning. That chair was empty. Carolyn noticed it the moment she walked in at 8:58. She set her folder on the table and looked at Priya, who stood near the door. "Where is Marsh?" "Not in the building yet, Miss Holt." "Badge hasn't scanned." "Who called him?" Marcus Webb called twice. No answer. The room was very quiet. 12 people looked at their hands, or their screens, or a point on the wall that wasn't Carolyn's face. She sat down. She opened her folder. She ran the meeting without him, pulling the facilities notes from the shared drive and delivering them herself. It was not difficult. It was not even particularly inconvenient, but it was wrong, and Carolyn Holt felt wrongness the way other people felt temperature immediately, physically, before it could be reasoned away. By 9:45, the meeting was wrapping up. The door behind her opened. She did not turn around immediately. She waited until she'd finished the sentence she was speaking, then set down her pen with a deliberateness that the room recognized and turned. Daniel Marsh was standing in the doorway. He was wearing the same gray facilities uniform he always wore, but the left sleeve was damp, and there was a streak of dried mud along the side of one boot. His hair was wet at the temples, despite the morning being dry. He was breathing the way a man breathes when he has been moving fast for a long time and is trying not to show it. His jaw was set, his eyes were not afraid, and that was perhaps the strangest thing about the moment, because everyone in that room was a little afraid of what came next. He was not. "Mr. Marsh," Carolyn said. Her voice was level, not loud. "Miss Holt." He stepped inside the room. "I know I'm late. I'm sorry." That was it. No explanation. No preamble. No reaching into his pocket for a doctor's note or a traffic report or a phone showing 3 missed calls. Just, "I'm sorry." One of the analysts coughed. Someone shifted in their chair. Carolyn looked at him for a long moment. She thought, briefly, of asking for an explanation. She had done it before. For other employees, offered them the courtesy of a hearing. But something about the plainness of his apology, the absence of any attempt to explain himself, felt like a choice. Like he had decided not to bother, and she interpreted that as a different kind of disrespect. "You were scheduled for this meeting," she said. "Your input was required. You did not call ahead. You did not send a message. You did not make any arrangement for your absence." She paused. "This is not the first conversation I've had about time in this building." "No," he said. "I know. Then you understand what comes next." He didn't answer. "You're terminated, Mr. Marsh. Effective immediately. Priya will handle the paperwork." She looked back down at her folder. "Thank you for your service to the company." The room was absolutely silent. Not the comfortable silence of a concluded argument, the held-breath silence of a room full of people watching something and not being able to look away. Daniel Marsh stood there for 3 seconds. Then he nodded once, turned, and walked out. He didn't slam the door. He barely made a sound. He had a locker in the basement, a small gray metal one between the electrical panel and the emergency equipment cabinet, marked with a piece of masking tape that said Marsh in black marker. He had put that tape there himself on his first week because the numbering system on the lockers had been confusing, and he hadn't wanted anyone else's things to end up on his shelf. Small things like that. They were everywhere, once you knew to look. He opened it without hurrying. Inside, a canvas backpack, gray and worn at both straps. A change of shoes, a paperback, a small, framed photograph he'd kept in there since he started, not on his desk, because he didn't have a desk, but here, where he could see it before the shift started if he wanted to. The photograph was of a girl with his same dark eyes, maybe 6 or 7 in the picture, laughing at something off camera. She was missing one of her front teeth. She was the kind of laughing that made your whole face hurt. He put the photograph in the backpack first, then the paperback, then the extra shoes. Teresa Kwan found him before he zipped it shut. She came down the basement stairs quickly, looking like she'd half run from somewhere. "Daniel." She stopped when she saw his face. She did it. "It's fine." "It's not fine." "Did you even tell her what—" "It doesn't matter anymore," he said. "Of course it matters. You should go back up there and tell her what happened." "She doesn't know. She fired you, and she doesn't even know." He zipped the backpack. "Daniel, I'll be okay. Teresa." He turned to look at her, and whatever she saw in his face made her stop arguing. Not defeat, not bitterness. Something quieter and more resolved than either of those things. "Tell Marcus I said thanks. He was good to work with. You can tell him yourself if you just go back up there and take care of yourself." He put the backpack over one shoulder, left arm only, she noticed. The right held slightly stiff, and walked to the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, he paused. She thought he was going to turn around, say something else. He didn't. He kept walking. Upstairs, in the lobby, two of the junior analysts watched him push through the revolving door and disappear into the street. One of them said something low and dismissive to the other. The other laughed. Neither of them knew what they were laughing at. Carolyn was at her desk by 10:15, working through the Lakeview numbers with a red pen and the focus of someone trying to outrun a feeling she hadn't named yet. The feeling was small. She was practiced at keeping small feelings small. The numbers were straightforward. A yield discrepancy in the Q3 figures, addressable with a revised projection model. She was 3/4 through the annotations when her personal phone buzzed on the corner of her desk. She looked at the screen. Lily's school phone. Lily was 8. She called from the school landline once a week to check in, usually on Thursdays. Today was Tuesday. Carolyn's hand was already reaching for the phone before her mind had caught up. Lily? Breathing first. Fast and shallow. The kind of breathing that children do when they've been crying so hard they can't fully stop. Carolyn stood up. She didn't decide to. Her body did it. Lily, what happened? Are you okay? I'm okay. A breath. I'm at school now. Mrs. Partridge is sitting with me. But Mom, I need to tell you something. Tell me. This morning. When I was walking from the drop-off, you know how I walk down the side path because it's shorter? Carolyn closed her eyes for half a second. She had told Lily twice to use the main entrance. Lily preferred the side path. She had not pushed harder because the neighborhood was safe and the school was 2 blocks from their building. Yes, she said. I know the path. There was a man. He was, I don't know. He was just there. And he was looking at me weird. And then he started walking the same way I was walking, and he was getting closer. And I tried to walk faster, but Lily's voice broke. He grabbed my arm. Mom. He grabbed it really hard. The room went very still. And then, Lily said, and her voice had changed, quieter now. Something underneath the fear that Carolyn couldn't name immediately, something like awe. And then this other man came, out of nowhere. He was big, and he put himself between us. And the bad man tried to push him, and they were fighting, sort of. And the bad man hit him, and the man who helped me, he didn't go down. He stayed there. He made sure I was safe first. He kept saying, "You're okay. You're okay. You're okay." And I was crying, and he said, "Hold my hand." And we went to the corner, and we waited until a teacher from the school saw us. Carolyn's hand was tight around the phone. Lily, the man who helped you. Do you know who he was? A pause. He told me his name, Lily said. He works at your building, Mom. He said he'd been working there for 2 years. His name is Daniel. The pen in Carolyn's other hand dropped to the floor. She did not pick it up. He said his name is Daniel Marsh, Lily continued, her voice small and careful. I asked him if you knew him, and he said yes. He said he worked in building services. Another breath, slower now. Mom. He had blood on his face, from where the man hit him. And he was hurt, but he kept talking to me. He kept telling me it was okay until I stopped shaking. He sat with me on the curb for 20 minutes. Carolyn Holt sat back down in her chair. The Lakeview numbers were in front of her. The red pen was on the floor. And Mom, he didn't go inside when he left. He didn't go to a hospital. He went toward your building. Silence. He's the one you fired today, Lily said. Isn't he? It was not a question. The school sent her the police report at 10:47. She was already in the car, phone pressed to the car's speaker. Priya on the line pulling the building's security cross-references. Grove Street is 3 blocks east of the building's side entrance, Priya said. The school drop-off is on Weller, which runs parallel. If he was coming from Keys Clicking, If he was coming from the direction of the bus depot on Michigan, he would have passed through Grove. That's the direct route to our service entrance. What time do the city cameras log on Grove? I'm looking. City Archive takes 20 minutes to pull, but I have our building's exterior camera. He badged out, he never badged in this morning. But there's exterior coverage. Give me 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Carolyn sat in the back of the car and looked at the city moving past the window and felt something that she did not have a name for yet. Something with the shape and the weight of a stone she had been carrying for years without knowing it was there. She thought about the meeting. The empty chair. His face when she delivered the verdict. That particular stillness. She thought about what it would take for a man like Daniel Marsh, 2 years, not one absence. A masking tape label on a locker in a basement to arrive late. I'm sorry. That was all he had said. Not, I'm sorry, but you should hear what happened. Not, I'm sorry. Give me a chance to explain. Just, I'm sorry. Like a man who had already decided that the explanation would not change anything. Like a man who knew the system he was standing in, knew its rules, and had chosen despite everything to absorb the consequence rather than offer a defense that might still fail him. Her phone buzzed. Priya's voice. I'm sending you the clip. She watched it on her phone. The timestamp in the lower corner said 7:31 a.m. The footage was from the exterior camera above the service door, angled to cover the alley approach. The resolution was clear enough. A gray morning, overcast, the light flat and honest. Daniel Marsh came into frame from the left at 7:31. He was walking quickly, the backpack on both shoulders, head down, standard morning pace. Then he stopped. He had heard something. Apparently he turned back to the left, toward the mouth of the alley, and was still for 2 seconds. Then he was moving again, this time fast, not walking, and he disappeared out of frame to the left. The camera didn't cover what happened next. It couldn't. But 2 minutes and 43 seconds later, he came back into frame. He was moving more slowly now. His right arm was held against his side. There was a girl with him, small, 8 years old, dark hair pulled back, her school backpack askew, her face turned toward him with an expression that even in low-resolution footage was unmistakable, pure and absolute trust. He walked her to the corner of the frame. He crouched down to her level, said something. She nodded. He put a hand briefly on her shoulder. Then he straightened, waited until someone, a school aide in a yellow vest, appeared at the corner and came toward them. And then he turned back toward the building. He stood at the service door for a moment. He seemed to adjust the backpack on his shoulders. The right arm was clearly wrong, held stiff, favoring it. He wiped his face with the back of his left hand. Then he went in. He went to work. He went to a meeting he had already missed, to face a consequence he already knew was coming, and he did not explain himself. Carolyn stopped the video. She watched the timestamp again. 7:31 to 7:34, 3 minutes elapsed from when he entered the frame to when he came back with Lily. 3 minutes. 3 minutes in which something violent and significant had happened to him, and he had absorbed it, steadied a frightened child, handed her to safety, and gone to his shift. Priya, she said, find out where he is. While the car was moving, she pulled his personnel file on her tablet. Priya had flagged it to her inbox. Carolyn opened it with the same clinical efficiency she applied to everything, expecting 2 pages of standard building services records. She got 12. Daniel Marsh, 38. Prior to Holt Meridian, 6 years with the Chicago Fire Department, Urban Search and Rescue Division. Before that, 4 years as a United States Army combat medic, 2 tours, awards. Army Commendation Medal, 2 citations for valor, 1 for actions taken in a non-combat emergency involving a collapsed structure and 3 civilian casualties that he had prevented from becoming 6. She read that sentence twice. After the fire department and the file had a note here from the HR intake team, a single line. Left CFD following personal bereavement. Certified EMT, lapsed. Applied for entry-level facilities role. No advancement requests made. She knew what personal bereavement meant. It was what HR wrote when someone had lost someone and didn't want to discuss it. She pulled up the supplemental file. It had been flagged by HR at intake as optional reading personal background submitted voluntarily by the applicant. His name was in the header. Below it, a paragraph he had apparently written himself as part of a non-required cover letter for a facilities job that paid $31 an hour. My wife, Renata, died in March 3 years ago. I have a daughter, Cora, who is 7. I left the fire department because I needed to be home before dark, and their shift structure made that impossible. I'm looking for a role where I can do work I know how to do, be reliable, and be home when my daughter needs me to be. I understand this is not a senior position. That is what I'm looking for. Carolyn read it twice. Then a third time. She set the tablet on the seat beside her and looked out the window. The car was on Michigan Avenue. The city was ordinary and relentless around them. A fire truck went past in the opposite direction. Lights on. No siren yet. She thought about a man who had been decorated for valor twice, who had pulled people out of rubble, who had spent 10 years running toward the thing everyone else ran from, who had then looked at a facilities role at a mid-size capital firm and thought, yes, this is what I need, to be home before dark. She thought about the empty chair. She thought about, I'm sorry. She thought about a 7-year-old girl named Cora and a framed photograph in a locker in a basement. Her phone buzzed. Priya's voice, carefully neutral. He's at Street Clements. Urgent care, not emergency. He walked in on his own, about 40 minutes ago. Teresa Kwan called it in. She'd been tracking his phone's last known location. She said, a pause. She said she thought you'd want to know. Carolyn picked up her tablet. She looked at the file one more time, at the Army commendation, at the line about being home before dark, at the photograph she had never seen and would not see for another hour. Tell the driver, she said. The urgent care on West Division was small and clean and smelled like antiseptic and the particular anxiety of people waiting to hear something they didn't want to hear. A woman with a toddler in a carrier sat near the window. An older man was filling out a form with a hand that shook slightly. The television in the corner was showing a cooking program with the sound off. Carolyn Holt walked in wearing her charcoal blazer and her silk blouse and the expression she typically wore going into difficult negotiations, and the woman at the front desk looked up and immediately understood that this was not a patient. I'm looking for a patient. Daniel Marsh. He would have come in about 40 minutes ago. I can't confirm patient information to. I'm his employer. She paused. Former employer. I need to speak with him. A beat of professional judgment from the woman at the desk. He's in Bay 3, she said. He said no visitors, but she looked at Carolyn's face. I'll let him know you're here. Carolyn sat in one of the chairs near the wall. She did not look at her phone. She did not review documents. She sat with her hands in her lap and looked at the cooking program on the television, unseeing, and waited. She did not wait long. He said you can come back. The woman at the desk was already moving. Bay 3. The curtain to Bay 3 was half open. A nurse, young, efficient, was finishing up a wrap on Daniel's right forearm. He was sitting on the examination table in his work pants and a hospital gown, his uniform shirt folded on the chair beside him. There was a narrow line of butterfly closures above his left eyebrow, and the bruising along his jaw was already coloring purple and deep red, blooming in the way that facial bruises did when the swelling was still building. He looked up when she came through the curtain. He did not look surprised. The nurse finished the wrap, said something to him in a low voice, and left without making eye contact with Carolyn. The silence lasted a moment. How did you know I was here? He asked. Teresa Kwan. Something moved across his face, not quite a smile. Good of her. Carolyn stood near the curtain. She was a woman who was precise in most things, who chose her words carefully and delivered them with the confidence of someone who expected them to land where she aimed. She stood there and found that no words were available. They were all wrong. Everything she could say was wrong in a different way. Daniel Marsh looked at his bandaged arm. 3 cracked ribs, he said, without being asked. Cracked, not broken. The forearm is a sprain. They're saying I'll be stiff for 2 weeks. He glanced up. The wrist is the one that makes it hard to type. Your daughter, Cora, is at school. She doesn't know any of this happened. I'd like to keep it that way for a little while longer, if I can. Carolyn opened her mouth, closed it. The man who grabbed the girl, Daniel said. Your daughter. I don't know who she is to you. For the record, she said her name was Lily and her mom worked in the building. I didn't know until just now that she was yours. Carolyn felt something behind her sternum that she did not have language for. He ran when a car turned onto the street, Daniel continued. He was about my size, but he had his hands free, and I had to keep one hand on the kid. So he tilted his head slightly, the gesture of a man discussing tactics with another professional. Factual, no editorializing. He got the ribs in before I could reposition. The forearm was from the last grab. He was going for the girl again. A pause. He didn't get her. No, Carolyn said. He didn't. She's a brave kid. She was scared, but she did exactly what I said. Stayed close. Didn't run. Smart. Carolyn sat down in the chair across from him, the one that had been left for visiting family. It was an odd sensation being a visitor, being the one who had come to this place to ask forgiveness rather than grant it. I watched the camera footage, she said. He didn't say anything. You went to work afterward. With 3 cracked ribs, I was late as it was. The simplicity of it hit her like something physical. She looked at the tile floor for a moment. Mr. Marsh, she said, why didn't you tell me what happened? He was quiet for a while, long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. Because it wouldn't have changed anything, he said. Or I didn't know if it would. And if it didn't, he stopped, started again. I've been in places where excuses were a currency. You traded them for time, for second chances, and I got tired of watching people spend them. I'd rather be the person who says I'm sorry and means it and takes what comes than the person who explains himself and waits to see if it's enough. Carolyn looked at him. That's either very principled, she said, or very exhausting. Both, he said. Mostly the second one. She stayed for 20 minutes. She said what she needed to say. She did not perform it. Not wrong in the technical sense of having made a decision without sufficient information, though that was true, but wrong in the more complete sense, the sense that she had looked at an empty chair and seen an offense against order rather than a gap that might have been filled with something she didn't know yet. He listened. He did not make it easy by nodding along or offering her absolution before she'd finished. When she was done, he said, You didn't know. I should have asked. Maybe. But you built a system, and the system had rules, and I walked into the system knowing what the rules were. He looked at his bandaged arm. I'm not angry at you. You should be. Probably. A pause. I'm tired more than I'm angry, if I'm being honest. She understood that sentence entirely. Outside, the sky had been building toward something all morning, and it began to rain. First, the kind of thin preliminary rain that serves as an announcement. Then, the real thing, loud against the clinic's narrow windows. The woman with the toddler in the waiting room made a sound of mild exasperation. The cooking program on the TV was still going. I want to offer you your job back, Carolyn said. That's the first thing. And I want to offer you a different role, something that reflects what you're actually capable of. Not building services, something in operations or emergency protocols. We have a safety director position that's been open for 4 months. She paused. It pays more than twice what you were making. You'd have a desk. You could set your own schedule within limits. You'd be home before dark. He was very still. That last part, he said. How did you know to say that? Your cover letter. He looked at his hands for a moment. You read my cover letter for a facilities job, he said. I read everything in your file. I should have read it this morning. She paused. I didn't, because I built a system where that particular information didn't feel necessary until it was. He was quiet for a long time. The rain ran down the window in shifting lines. I'd need a day or two, he said finally. Take whatever time you need. You're on paid leave as of now. For the record, he looked up at that. For the record, he repeated. A pause. Something that wasn't quite a smile but lived in the same neighborhood. She's a good kid, he said again. Your daughter. She asked me. While we were waiting on the curb, she asked me if I had kids. I told her about Cora. She asked if Cora was happy. I said I tried to make sure she was. She said. He stopped, and something in his face changed. Softened, in the way that faces soften when a small and ordinary thing turns out to have been carrying unexpected weight. She said that sounded like something a good dad would say. Carolyn did not say anything. She didn't have to. Her daughter was at the kitchen table when Carolyn got home at 6, doing multiplication worksheets with the focused frown she had inherited from her father, who had been very good at math and very bad at everything else. Crayons were scattered across the other end of the table. A half-eaten apple sat on a paper towel. Everything ordinary. The babysitter, Gretchen, met Carolyn at the door. She's been okay, Gretchen said, low. A little quiet. The school counselor spent time with her this afternoon. She was asking for you around 4. Thank you. Carolyn handed over her bag. I'll take it from here. Lily looked up when she heard Carolyn's footsteps. For a moment, they just looked at each other, mother and daughter, the 8-year-old with multiplication pencil still raised, the 36-year-old CEO still in her work clothes but standing differently than she usually stood when she came home. Slightly less armored. Slightly more present. Lily put down the pencil. Carolyn sat across from her at the kitchen table, among the crayons and the half-eaten apple, and reached across and took her daughter's hand. Tell me everything, she said. Lily told her everything. Not the summarized version she had given on the phone, the full version, slow and detailed. The way children tell stories, circling back, adding things they forgot, describing the texture of the curb they sat on, and the color of the aide's yellow vest, and the fact that Daniel's hand had been very cold when she held it but steady, not shaking even though hers was. He had a picture in his pocket, Lily said. It fell out when he was crouching down to my level. He picked it up and I saw it was a little girl. His daughter, Carolyn said. Cora, Lily's eyes got wide. You know about her? I do. Now, is she nice? I don't know. I've never met her. Carolyn squeezed her daughter's hand. Maybe you will, though. If that's something you'd want. Lily thought about this with the seriousness of an 8-year-old weighing something important. I think I'd want to, she said. I think she must be nice, because he was nice, even when he was hurt. She paused. Mom, why did you fire him? Carolyn was quiet for a moment. She owed her daughter the truth of this, not the version where she was the CEO and he was the employee and the rules were the rules. The other version. Because I didn't ask the right question, she said. I saw that he was late, and I made a decision before I understood why. I had all the information I needed to know that he was a reliable person, and I didn't use it. I used the part that was easy, and I ignored the part that was harder. Lily looked at her for a long moment with her dark, serious eyes. That sounds like a mistake, she said. Not unkindly, just plainly. It was, Carolyn said. Did you say sorry? I did. Did he forgive you? Carolyn thought about the clinic, the rain on the window. I'm not angry at you. I think so, she said. But forgiveness isn't really the end of it. You still have to do the thing you should have done. The apology comes first, then the work. Lily absorbed this. That sounds right, she said. Then, he said I was brave. You were. I didn't feel brave. You never do, Carolyn said. That's sort of what brave is. Daniel Marsh called at 9 the next morning. Carolyn was at her desk earlier than usual, which was very early. She had slept, but not deeply. The Lakeview numbers were done, the projections filed, the Meridian West review wrapped. The work had continued, as work did. The machine ran. "I've thought about it," he said, when she picked up. A pause. She heard something in the background, small, high-pitched, purposeful. A child's voice asking about cereal options. "Give me a minute," he said, away from the phone. And then, the blue bowl, Cora, second shelf. A pause, then his voice returned. "Sorry, don't be. I'm going to accept the offer," he said. "The safety director role. Tell me, I'm not coming back because you apologized. I'm coming back because it's a good job and it pays well and my daughter needs stability. And I've spent 2 years trying to rebuild something stable for her. That's the reason." A beat. The apology matters. I'm not dismissing it. But it's not what tipped the balance. Carolyn found that she respected this deeply. The precision of it. The refusal to let sentiment do the work that logic should do. "Understood," she said, "and I wanted in writing the schedule parameters. Home before 6, flexibility on school events. The standard coverage protocols apply for genuine emergencies, but the definition of emergency has to be reasonable. I'll have Priya draft it today." "Good." Another pause. The child's voice again, louder now. Something about whether the dog on the cereal box was a real dog or a cartoon dog. "It's a cartoon dog," Daniel said, away from the phone, with the patience of a man who has answered this question before. Carolyn almost smiled. "One more thing," she said. "I'd like to extend an invitation. Formally. My daughter asked if she could meet Cora. I want to be clear that there's no obligation, it's Lily asking, not me managing anything." She said. She paused. She said she thought Cora must be nice. Silence on the other end for a beat. "Why does she think that?" he asked. "Because of you." The silence was different now. "This weekend," he said finally. "Cora likes the park on Maple. The one with the wooden castle thing. I know it. Saturday morning. 9:30, if that works." "It works." He said goodbye with the same directness with which he did everything. The call lasted 4 minutes. Carolyn set the phone down and looked at the Chicago skyline through her office's floor-to-ceiling window, gray and bright in the way it was on clear, cold mornings, and thought about the particular arithmetic of how much you could miss when you were only looking at what was in front of you. She thought about an empty chair at a boardroom table. She thought about a masking tape label in a basement locker. She thought about a man who had held a frightened child's cold hand on a wet curb and kept saying "you're okay" until it was true, and then had gone to work. She thought about what it cost to be that kind of person, and how little she had understood of it when she was in the room making decisions. Saturday was cold and bright. The particular clarity that October brought to Chicago air so clean it almost hurt. The lake throwing light all the way across the city. The park on Maple had a wooden castle structure near the south end, painted red and green, worn smooth at the handrails from years of small hands. A tire swing, a sandpit that was mostly used in warmer months. On October mornings it attracted a specific type of visitor. Parents who had been indoors for 3 days, and children who could not be contained any longer. Carolyn arrived at 9:28. Lily walked beside her at a pace that was technically casual and actually quite urgent. Daniel and Cora were already there. Cora was 9, she had turned 9 2 weeks ago. Carolyn learned later, with her father's dark eyes and a green winter coat, and the particular fearlessness of a child who had been raised by someone who faced things directly. She was at the top of the castle structure when they arrived, surveying the park from the highest platform with the expression of a general satisfied with the terrain. Daniel was standing below, one hand on the rail, watching. He had color in his face that he hadn't had at the clinic. The bruising on his jaw was yellowing at the edges, starting to fade. He was wearing a dark jacket and the same boots with the scuffed toes. and when he turned and saw them coming across the grass, his expression was something that Carolyn was not sure she had ever aimed at anyone, and which she therefore did not immediately recognize. It was simple openness, nothing guarded in it. Lily was already pulling slightly ahead. Cora came down the castle ladder 2 rungs at a time, which was inadvisable, and landed on both feet at the bottom with a thud that would have alarmed most parents and did not alarm Daniel at all. The 2 girls looked at each other. Children operated on a frequency that adults had mostly forgotten, a quick and instinctive calculus of interest and compatibility that bypassed entirely the slow machinery of adult judgment. Cora said, "Do you want to go on the tire swing? I can push you really high." Lily said, "Okay, but then I push you," and they ran. Carolyn and Daniel stood 20 feet apart and watched their daughters climb over each other at the tire swing with the complete unself-consciousness of children who had decided the other was acceptable. Daniel came to stand beside her. "She was at the top of that castle for 20 minutes before you got here," he said. "She says she's mapping the park. She has a notebook." Carolyn looked. Cora did, in fact, have a small notebook tucked under one arm. "Lily records license plates," Carolyn said. "She has a system. She's trying to find 2 cars with consecutive numbers." A small silence. Not uncomfortable. "How are the ribs?" she asked. "Fine. Better." A pause. "I start Monday. Priya sent the paperwork Friday. She's efficient. She said to tell you the Lakeview secondary projections came in 6% above forecast." Carolyn looked at him. "You talked to Priya about work projections?" "She called to confirm my badge protocol and mentioned it. She seemed pleased." "She would be." Carolyn looked back at the girls, who were now both on the tire swing somehow, which did not seem structurally advisable. "Priya is efficient and also mildly terrifying." "I noticed," he said. "I think we'll get along well." Lily was laughing. The sound of it carried across the park, that particular frequency of uncomplicated delight that 8-year-olds had access to in a way adults mostly didn't. Cora was laughing too. Carolyn watched them and felt something loosen in her chest that had been tight for a long time. Not all the way, not suddenly, but the beginning of loosening, the first crack in a structure she'd spent years reinforcing without examining whether it still needed to be so strong. "She called you a hero," Carolyn said. Lily, on the phone, when she was describing what happened. Daniel was quiet for a moment. She was scared. People use that word when they're scared. She uses it now when she's not scared, too. Carolyn looked at him. She uses it the way she uses words she means. He looked at the girls on the swing. "I just did what was in front of me," he said. "What needed doing." "I know," Carolyn said. "That's the whole thing, isn't it? Knowing what needs doing and doing it without waiting to be acknowledged for it." A pause. "I'm still learning that one," she said. It was, for Carolyn Holt, an unusual admission. She knew it. She made it anyway. Daniel looked at her, and his expression had that same quality she'd noticed at the clinic, that simple openness, unhurried. Nothing performed about it, and then he looked back at his daughter, who had now claimed the entire tire swing, and was spinning slowly with her notebook open, and her green coat bright against the gray and gold of the October park. "Cora," he called. She looked up. "What's the reconnaissance report?" Cora consulted her notebook with great seriousness. 2 squirrels on the north bench. 1 dog, medium-sized, probably a lab. The path behind the castle is muddy, but passable. She looked up. "Conditions are good." "Good to know," he said. "Yeah. Can Lily stay for lunch after?" He looked at Carolyn. Carolyn looked back. "I don't see why not," she said. Cora returned to her notebook. Lily had acquired a stick from somewhere and was using it to investigate a particularly interesting piece of bark near the castle base. The tire swing moved slowly in the cold, bright air. It was, Carolyn thought, a very ordinary Saturday. The most ordinary possible Saturday. Grass and cold air and children and coffee cooling in a paper cup and the sounds of a park doing what parks do on October mornings.